Greetings, I'm your host, Dr. Wolfula. When I'm not secretly assimilating with and mimicking the entire human race, I'm here at the Wolfula, and everywhere around you, reviewing movies. Speaking of which, as determined by my fans, I'll be reviewing The Thing, but not just the John Carpenter 1982 classic. I'll also be covering the original The Thing from Another World, released in 1951, and the more recent 2011 Thing. Mostly because I've never seen the other two, and it makes this video a lot more interesting for me. And longer to make. Oh boy. Let's start from square one, though. All three of these films are derived from one source, a 1938 novella titled Who Goes There, written by John Campbell Jr., and originally published in Astounding Science Fiction, which I actually read in preparation for this video. Yes, for once, I read something that wasn't a JCPenney catalog. Having seen the films first, I was surprised that pretty much everything we know and fear about The Thing is fully formed in this forward-thinking sci-fi story. Much of Who Goes There's concept is used across all three film adaptations. Researchers at an isolated base in the frozen wasteland of Antarctica discover an ancient buried flying saucer and an alien preserved in ice. Once thawed out, the alien, or thing, consumes researchers and sled dogs at the outpost, mimicking anything it devours exactly down to its memories and personality. The only major thing about the thing that isn't carried over to the movies is that it has telepathy in the book. Now, the book is an interesting read for fans of the films, but it reads a little too much like a play, with many pages spent on characters just discussing the thing before and after it's thawed, formulating plans and such. It's exactly because of how vividly the alien is described, though, that makes the golden concept of the story so tempting for an adaptation. That, as well as its underlying themes of isolation and paranoia, led to Who Goes There's first film adaptation in 1951 as The Thing from Another World. A Howard Hawks production, the 1951 Thing is a loose adaptation of the Campbell story. Instead of Antarctica, the film takes place in Alaska, and largely involves an Air Force team based in Anchorage. Speaking of which, where are my Anchorage people at? Represent! Anyway, the crew, headed by Captain Hendry, is called upon to help excavate a UFO that crashed near a research outpost, and a reporter named Scotty decides that he wants to get an eyeful of this shit too, all while saying "holy cats" multiple times.
Holy cat. Cat. Holy cat. It's moving.
Keep in mind that this was still when the Hays Code was in action, so you couldn't say stuff like "holy moly," or "holy shit" for that matter. Captain Hendry, the crew, and the researchers head to the crash site and discover a flying saucer beneath the ice, the find of the century.
It's round.
We finally got one.
We found a flying saucer.
So they proceed to blow it up with thermite charges. Well, at least it made a kick-ass explosion.
It's all gone. Secrets that might have given us a new science. Gone. That's just dandy.
Luckily for the researchers, they managed to salvage something from the saucer. An alien creature frozen in the ice below.
Man from Mars. How do you propose getting him out, Captain? I don't know. Use more thermite. Not this. Whatever's quickest.
Instead of blowing this up with thermite as well to see what kind of explosion it'll make, the crew ships a big old block of creature out of the ice and takes it back to the outpost. The researchers are just itching to take a look at the thawed-out spaceman, but Captain Hendry forbids it as a precaution and aims to keep the alien-sicle frozen for the time being.
It's practically certain we'll be asked by your superiors to make a study of it.
Probably will, Doctor, but we can't permit it now.
We don't have to have any permission.
Eddie, break that window.
Jesus, was this film made before windows could be opened? Of course, this film is called The Thing from Another World, not The Frozen Thing from Another World, so the alien's gotta stretch his legs sooner or later, and the reason for it is a bit of a stretch itself. Now, the most likely scenario would be Dr. Carrington sneakily sabotaging Henry's plan so he can finally examine the creature himself, but no! Instead, the bumbling Corporal Barnes gets spooked at the sight of the frozen alien and puts an electric blanket over it that he didn't realize was left on by the previous guard. Way to go, Barnes, you fucking idiot. Barnes doesn't even look in the direction of the alien anyway, so the creature eventually thaws out, and Barnes immediately opens fire at the sight of the monster like Phil Spector getting rejected on a date. So, a delirious Barnes informs his superiors that the alien is now on the loose, and makes sure to leave out how it's entirely his fault.
Captain, it was awful. You could have seen those hands and those eyes. Captain, you gotta do something about it. You got.
How refreshing! The Thing from Another World is definitely a product of its time. It hasn't aged as well as a certain other sci-fi epic released the same year called The Day the Earth Stood Still, because The Thing from Another World is a very basic alien invader flick. The film has a 40-minute build-up to the monster, and peppers in the typical romance throughout that you'd expect to be shoehorned into a movie of the time, inserting a few scenes between Hendry and Dr. Carrington's secretary, Nikki, who only exists, I assume, to give the stony-faced hero some kind of dimension.
Look, my only excuse is that I liked you. Right away. So I started wrong. Can't we begin all over?
How would you begin?
Like in this scene where, Nikki ties Hendry up to a chair. Whoa, they were pretty kinky back in the day.
You want another one, Pat?
What really ages the film, though, and makes it a dull watch today, especially during the build-up to the alien, are all of the static group shots that show everything and everyone in a scene, while also having to sometimes rely on descriptions of stuff that's not in a shot.
What is it? Looks like a man.
It's like a Kevin Smith movie. I can't be too harsh about this, though. This was long before the close-up was invented, after all. What about the titular character, the Thing, though? How does it fare in this first adaptation? Well, like I said earlier, due to the budget, the Thing is simplified into a typical mindless alien monster that can't transform at all, like in the original story. Instead, after the Thing gets into a brawl with some sled dogs and gets its arm torn off, what a pussy, the researchers examine the arm and describe the Thing as a near indestructible, sentient, plant-based life form that for some reason wears a jumpsuit while looking and acting a lot like the Frankenstein monster, but without the pathos.
Just a minute, Doctor. It sounds like you're trying to describe a vegetable.
I am.
It's nowhere near as scary a concept as an alien that replicates people, but maybe they didn't quite want to conjure up the Cold War fears of Russian spies all around you, masquerading as Americans who really took advantage of the fact that denim jeans were legal. Very, very comfortable. I mean, you could scare the shit out of people back then with a tall, lumbering guy in spooky makeup, so that's what James Arness as the Thing is, but no amount of dark lighting can help the monster's case today when he's summed up with total seriousness as a super carrot.
It sounds like, well, just as though you're describing some form of super carrot. That's nearly right, Mr. Scott.
It's hard to really be scared when all they need to defeat the Thing is a side of ranch dressing.
An intellectual carrot, the mind boggles.
Shouldn't. Imagine how strange it would have seemed during the Pliocene age to forecast that worms, fish, lizards that crawled over the earth were going to evolve into us.
Yeah, I don't think evolution works that way, Doc. Unless there are lizard and worm people I'm not aware of. Maybe in Delaware. Yeah, the movie tries to justify the concept of a super carrot through pseudoscience by presenting some real-life examples of sentient plants.
You ever hear of the telegraph vine?
Not recently.
Or the... Is it the acanthus century plant, Dr. Stern?
Yes.
Go ahead, Doctor. That's your field.
Well, the century plant catches mice, bats, squirrels, any small mammals, uses a sweet syrup as bait, then holds onto its catch and feeds on it.
Except none of the examples of the plants the doctors mention are actually sentient or do any of the things that they say they do. The writer of the movie, Charles Lederer, wasn't counting on the internet eventually being invented by Al Gore. The one really interesting aspect of the Thing in this movie, though, is that it can duplicate itself, making it a one-man army that needs blood to flourish.
This creature is more powerful and more intelligent than we are. He regards us as important only for his nourishment. He has the same attitude toward us as we have toward a field of cabbages.
Well, Doctor, a field of cabbages can't really defend itself, so I'm not totally sure about your analogy here. The Thing from Another World was obviously limited in what it could do and what it could depict on screen at the time, especially violence. If I'm not mistaken, all of the Thing's murders are off-screen, as well as much of its activity, instead often being reported on by some guy who has a run-in with the monster.
What happened, Doctor?
In the greenhouse, I was working. I couldn't see.
Yeah.
Then a blast of cold air, and I heard Olson scream. When I turned, the Thing struck at me.
Go on.
I don't remember my head. I must have fallen.
It could be argued that this flick has a Jaws feel, though, where anticipation toward the few scenes the thing appears in is steadily built, especially as tension grows between Dr. Carrington's researchers and Hendry's crew.
You're talking like frightened schoolboys.
You're right, Doctor. I am frightened.
Any destruction would be an outrage, a betrayal of science.
It'll be a betrayal of science, Doctor, but it'll make me and some of the others sleep a lot better if we get rid of it.
The highlight of the film for me is the Thing's surprise attack, where Hendry's men retaliate by setting the alien on fire with kerosene and a flare gun. It's an amazing scene that's supposedly the first ever full-body burn stunt, making it dazzlingly dangerous looking to behold. It could have gone really wrong and caused a few deaths, but it didn't, resulting in an incredible scene to watch to this day. Fire's pretty. Alright, I'm gonna spoil the end of this movie that's more than 60 years old. Got a problem with that? Well, skip to this time code for my final verdict, and we'll move on to the 80s. With the temperature in the outpost falling due to a sabotaged fuel line, the crew makes a last-ditch effort to face the monster by luring it to the generator room where they intend to electrocute the thing, but Dr. Carrington is having none of that.
Keep away. Keep away. I won't allow you to destroy it. Get out of the generator.
You could say the doctor has a thing for the monster. Ha ha ha! Thank you. I'll be here all week. Anyway, at the climax, the doctor tries to reason with the, giant vegetable person.
I'm a scientist who's trying.
Of course it doesn't work. So Hendry electrocutes the thing, and it turns into a dwarf. Aw, rats, I was hoping for another explosion, but I guess turning into a dwarf is the next best thing. In the final scene, the characters act pretty nonchalant, joking around like they weren't almost killed by a blood-sucking carrot monster.
You know, I'm getting pretty fed up with the North Pole. How much does the captain make a month?
Not very much.
That's a good start. Go ahead.
Enough to support 2 people?
Not nearly enough.
People in the 50s were really weird.
Watch the skies. Everywhere. Keep looking. Keep watching the skies.
Well, that was The Thing from Another World. Not a perfect adaptation, and it's pretty dated, but it has some great moments, and the score by Dmitri Tiomkin is a classic sci-fi soundtrack with an eerie, menacing mystique to it. I give The Thing from Another World a super carrot out of a field of cabbages. The Thing from Another World had a major cultural impact and influenced a generation of filmmakers, including John Carpenter. I mean, the film had to have had quite the effect on Carpenter in particular, seeing as how he incorporated clips into his own classic horror film, Halloween. During a horror-thon, little Lindsay Wallace watches on TV.
Holy cats.
In 1980, producer Wilbur Stark purchased the rights to a bunch of RKO films intended to be remade, including The Thing from Another World, and Carpenter was chosen to helm the new Universal version with a screenplay by Bill Lancaster. Now, The Thing from Another World is one of those movies that absolutely should be remade, seeing as how it was only loosely based on the original story, and Carpenter sought to make a more faithful adaptation of Who Goes There, with the far simpler title, The Thing. Now, the title may be simple, but the movie's far more complex. The film opens in Antarctica as a helicopter opens fire on a sled dog. Now, this is something I'd expect to see in Alabama, but the South Pole? Something's up here. As the dog leads the helicopter to an American outpost, the Americans observe that the chopper is of Norwegian origin.
It's Norwegian.
Okay, now it's starting to make a little more sense. Those damn Scandinavians. Anywho, the Norwegians corner the dog at the American outpost and start throwing thermite charges first and asking questions later. Oh, Butterfingers. The remaining Scandinavian goes all trenchcoat mafia on these confused researchers in pursuit of the dog, but Commander Gary gives the SOB an asshole where his forehead used to be. Now this is how you open a movie. None of that playing cards shit.
Pair of queens.
Believe it or not, the threat of this film isn't the typical deranged Norwegians. The Americans take a trek over to the Norwegian outpost and finds the place in total ruins, an utter bloodbath, but again, we're talking about Norwegians here. There are signs, though, that something was thought out, and back at Outpost 31, the biologist performs an autopsy on a bizarre body salvaged from the wreckage.
Well, what we got here is what appears to be, anyway, a normal set of internal organs.
Seemingly, but Norwegians are known tricksters. Not long after that, the Norwegian sled dog is integrated into the kennel with its American peers and gets comfortable. Real comfortable. The entire crew checks out the commotion in the kennel and see firsthand the reason why those Norwegian dudes probably wanted to kill this damn dog. After making smoked barbecue from the abomination, an autopsy shows that the thing is a being that can, well, imitate creatures that it devours.
We got to it before it had time to finish.
Finish what?
Finish imitating these dogs.
Finally, no more super carrots. The crew embarks on another investigation, this time checking out the object of the Norwegians' research. An ancient flying saucer and whatever used to be right there. It was probably just a giant cooler. Those Scandinavians love to get drunk and belligerent. From here, it's pretty clear that the alien life form may still be on the loose inside the outpost, adopting the appearance of crew members. Actually, let's talk a bit about some of the characters of Outpost 31. There's McCready, the helicopter pilot, played by frequent Carpenter collaborator Kurt Russell.
If you were all these things, then you just attack me right now. So some of you are still human.
An everyman and the main protagonist, who's not exactly Snake Plissken in this movie, but he has some of the mercenary qualities.
Windows, you come with us. Norris, you stay here. Any of them move, you fry them. You hear anything at all, you cut loose on the sirens. We all meet back here in 20 minutes regardless.
Then there's Childs, the chief mechanic, played by Keith David, who is pragmatic to a fault, disbelieving pretty much anything related to the thing.
Thousands of years ago it crashes and this thing gets thrown out or crawls out and it ends up freezing in the ice.
I just cannot believe any of this voodoo bullshit.
I don't know what voodoo has to do with aliens.
Happens all the time, man. They're falling out of the skies like flies.
Donald Moffat as Commander Gary, who's a hard ass but has a weak stomach for this real danger.
McCready, I know Bennings. I've known him for 10 years. He's my friend.
We gotta burn the rest of them.
And then there's Blair the biologist, played by Wilford Brimley. I always forget that Wilford Brimley is in this movie because he's totally unrecognizable without his iconic Wilford Brimley prospector stash. Anyway, Blair is the first to realize the true threat that the thing poses to the entire world because his magic early 80s computer told him. So Blair goes into a mad rage and sabotages the outpost's equipment, potentially stranding the crew of Outpost 31 for the whole winter.
Come on, man. You don't want to hurt anybody.
I'll kill you!
Blair is contained, but the damage is done, and the crew is effectively isolated with the thing that's slowly consuming and replicating them.
I said watch Clark. And watch him close, do you hear me?
There are many other minor characters in the film that could have just been fodder for the beast, but all these characters have their moments, like Clark the dog handler seeing the corpses of his beloved mutts after Blair decided he didn't want to take any chances. Some of the other characters, I'm not entirely sure of what they do at this outpost just from watching the movie. Like Knowles here. I know he's the cook, but my best guess watching the flick is that he's the guy who roller skates that every Antarctic research station needs, I guess.
Maybe we're at war with Norway.
Oh, there's also the guy who looks kind of like Danny Masterson. Man, I can't wait to see Danny Masterson in Season 3 of The Ranch. It's gonna be great. John Carpenter's The Thing is true to its source material, but fleshes out and expands upon who goes there at the same time, capturing the absolute isolation of the setting and the desperation of the characters.
Nobody trusts anybody now. We're all very tired.
Even from the beginning, Outpost 31 is presented as a boring environment where you could easily get stir-crazy in without needing an alien breathing down your neck. Well, at least you can get weed and watch old game shows at the South Pole, just like college. There are also no women at the base, except for Adrienne Barbeau's voice on a chess-playing computer.
Checkmate. Checkmate.
Bitch.
And a blow-up doll in a deleted scene, so you have the perfect environment for a mimicking alien to flourish. A small population of people that just wants to keep to itself and have some privacy any opportunity it can. I mean, if somebody's wife was down in that base, the thing would never get that guy because he'd never have a moment to himself. Am I right, fellas? The remake also ramps up the paranoia. Anybody can be a thing, nobody can be trusted, and everyone becomes an enemy. Even McCready, the hero, is pretty morally ambiguous when, after he reluctantly is put in charge, is willing to blow the entire outpost up when suspicion is directed at him.
Back off. Way off.
The Thing is a bit of a slow burn like the original, but from the moment the dog thing enters the kennel, the film is an extremely tense experience throughout that grips onto me tight every time and doesn't let go. The film is highly rewatchable because, even after I know who becomes a thing, I still look out for little details that hint at it and try to figure out at what point they may have been infected. Like, recently I noticed what should have been obvious before. A noose in Blair's cabin, yet he claims to be alright.
I'm not gonna harm anybody, and there's nothing wrong with me. And if there was, I'm all better now.
I guess Wilford Brimley eating beans had my full attention in previous viewings.
I'm alright, I'm much better. And I won't harm anybody. And you gotta let me come back inside.
The Thing is a thrilling film, but it also has amazing effects that hold up 35 years later. The film is just as effective when the monster reveals itself. The transformations are a memorable frenzy of masterfully executed prosthetic makeup effects and puppetry supervised by Rob Bottin. The gruesomeness of the Thing's various forms reminds me a bit of what Evil Dead accomplished a year earlier, but way more polished looking in this film. John Carpenter's version of the Thing has no true form at all, but instead will adopt a hodgepodge of whatever aspects of the many creatures it absorbed that will best defend itself, creating some really bizarre, amorphous shapes. It's a true marvel of practical effects wizardry, up there with American Werewolf in London's transformation scene. The one scene above all that best fuses the incredible effects and the tension is the iconic blood test scene. The Thing is a living creature down to the tiniest piece, so MacReady restrains his colleagues and tests their blood by prodding it with a heated wire.
It's a crock of shit.
This scene was in the original story, but it's brought to vivid life here. The execution is fantastic down to the editing, and even the small detail of Palmer's blood moving across the floor. On MacReady's part, though, it's just a clusterfuck of bad planning.
I'd rather not spend the rest of this winter tied to this fucking couch!
Alright, before I move on to the end, I just want to mention that The Thing has a great score, as is expected of a Carpenter film, but the music isn't actually by John Carpenter like I always assumed. No, The Thing was actually scored by the great spaghetti western composer Ennio Morricone, whom Carpenter admired, and the composer delivered an atmospheric Carpenter-esque score that's heavy on synth. The music is used sparingly when the Thing actually appears, instead effectively only suggesting the creature and speaking to the paranoia of Outpost 31's crew. Alright, I'm gonna be spoiling the very end of John Carpenter's The Thing. Spoilers, it's a great film to the very end, but skip to this time code if you haven't seen it yet and don't want a cool ending ruined. So, by the end, it's down to MacReady to face the Thing, and he does it in heroic style.
Fuck you too!
The last-ditch effort leaves the outpost in ruins and MacReady alone. Or so it seemed, but Childs survived.
Where were you, Childs?
Thought I saw Blair. I went out after him. Got lost in the storm.
It's a suspicious turn of events, but there's nothing that the tired MacReady can do about it. With no hope on the horizon, the two sit in the snow.
If you're worried about me...
If we've got any surprises for each other, I don't think we're in much shape to do anything about it.
It's a powerful, ambiguous conclusion. It leaves the viewer at the end doing what they've done the whole film, questioning everything. Except the final scene gives no answers. One could be the Thing, neither could be the Thing, or hell, both could be the Thing, ironically paranoid that the other might be human. When The Thing was first released, it was not well received. The film came out weeks after another more cheery Universal alien film called E.T., and came out the same day as Blade Runner, though Blade Runner was also not well received when it was first released. At the time, The Thing was maligned by mainstream critics and sci-fi fans alike for being too grim and gruesome with its nihilistic tone and horrifying visuals. But I gotta say, critics back in the day were full of shit. Not like today when you have sources like a guy named Dr. Wolfula to rely on. Unlike some so-called professional critics of the time like Roger Ebert, I don't think that John Carpenter's The Thing is a disappointment at all. In fact, the film stands the test of time as one of the greatest sci-fi horror films of all time. Maybe the best. Point is, The Thing is a true timeless classic. A must-watch. I give John Carpenter's The Thing, Wilford Brimley without a mustache out of Kurt Russell holding dynamite. The Thing was hated when it was released. Even the original's director, Christian Nyby, was talking shit about Carpenter, but, you know, Howard Hawks was the real director of the original, so whatever. In the years following its release, though, The Thing gained a cult following and was eventually critically reappraised in the 90s as the classic that it truly is. Yeah, understandable. With all the shitty horror and sci-fi films coming out in the 90s, I wouldn't blame people looking for any great flicks they might have missed. Subsequently, the film received comic book sequels and a Carpenter-endorsed video game sequel, but no film sequels. There were attempts to start a sequel, including a Carpenter pitch that would bring back Russell and David immediately after the first, through Frostbite explaining why they look older. Okay. And also a Frank Darabont-produced Sci-Fi Channel miniseries, but none of these bore fruit. It wouldn't be until 2011 when a new The Thing film saw release called The Thing. Now, despite the title, it's not another remake or a reboot. No, confusingly, it's a prequel to the 1982 John Carpenter film. They should have called it The Thing Episode 1. So, what's this prequel about anyway? Well, remember the Norwegians who found the Thing in the original? Well, this movie's about them. Aw, fuck, a whole film about fucking Norwegians? This is bullshit! The new Thing opens up a bit like Jurassic Park. In a cold opening, get it, Norwegian researchers and a snowcat fall through some Antarctic ice and unfortunately aren't killed, instead making a startling discovery. Cut to America, where a young paleontologist named Kate, played by Mary Elizabeth Winstead, is busy doing paleontologist shit, I imagine, but is called upon by her old pal Adam and a Norwegian scientist by the name of Dr. Halvorsen to come to Antarctica to check some shit out.
What'd they find?
We're flying down there tomorrow evening to examine the site, and I need a paleontologist.
Doctor, I'm sure you can understand that I need to know a little bit about what it is I'm being asked to dig up.
It's very vague, and Kate is reluctant, but it'll look good on a resume, and you aren't gonna break the glass ceiling by saying no to mysterious trips to Antarctica.
And I guess I don't have any time to think about this.
No, I'm sorry. I need your answer right now.
It seems a little unlikely that an American paleontologist in her 20s would be called on for this assignment, though. I mean, are there absolutely no paleontologists in Norway? Oh well, she's already on the helicopter co-piloted by the guy who played Uncle Owen in Attack of the Clones. Too late to rethink this whole thing, and Norwegians can't do shit without English-speaking help anyway. So, what have the researchers found in Antarctica that needs Kate's attention? Superman's Fortress of Solitude? Kinda. It's a flying saucer with a side of frozen alien.
How long will it take to get out, you know, Kate?
Assuming you have the right equipment, I'd say maybe half a day.
So, Kate and the Norwegians exhume a thingsicle. It's kinda remarkable how much this prequel actually remakes from the original, either incidentally or intentionally. Dr. Halvorsen even occupies the role of Dr. Carrington, really wanting to get an eyeful of this alien despite resistance from our heroine Kate.
I mean, the conditions are so unpredictable and we don't have the proper equipment.
Though she doesn't have quite the same amount of authority as Hendry from the original.
In the future, don't contradict me in front of those people again.
You mean we're not allowed to examine it, to
I mean,
investigate
just that,
whether
Doctor. This is stupid.
Unlike the original, though, the alien just breaks out of the ice while the Norwegians are typically getting shit-faced. Predictable Norwegians. Derek here attempts to report this news to the inebriated Scandinavians.
It ain't a damn joke, man! The freaking thing's alive!
Why is he saying freaking? Was this movie supposed to be PG? The crew investigates and finds no sign of an alien. Oh, never mind. Man, Norwegians are really sturdy. Luckily, Uncle Owen lights a candle under that alien's ass, saving the day. That's just American know-how right there, blowing shit up. So, Dr. Halvorsen performs an autopsy on the thing, and it was in the process of duplicating a guy, yada yada. We've been through this. The thing mimics other organisms, but with a key new detail revealed. It can't mimic inorganic material.
It's fascinating. It is fascinating.
I like the first reading of that line better. So the next day, Uncle Owen evacuates some injured Norwegians by helicopter, but Kate notices something is up with the bloody dental fillings on a bathroom floor, and she flags down the chopper, but Griggs transforms into a thing via CGI from a video game cutscene. Yeah, this movie shows way too much way too soon. No subtlety at all. Kate tries to explain the situation, but is met with disbelief by the Norwegians.
That this thing can, and probably has, replicated a person.
So, aliens exist, but replication is impossible? Okay. The Norwegians change their tune when Kate is attacked by a Juliet thing. That looks a bit like the Tasmanian Devil. The CGI definitely looks a lot like a Looney Tunes cartoon here. Okay, so what gives with all the shitty CGI? Well, Amalgamated Dynamics, an effects company, actually made extensive prosthetic and animatronic effects for the film, but most of it was replaced by CGI in post-production. It's a bit of a George Lucas special edition move, and shows how far practical effects have fallen out of favor in Hollywood. Oh, those practical effects are just a placeholder until our whiz kids fix it in a computer. It's a shame because behind-the-scenes footage shows some pretty cool effects on display, but the final product ends up looking like microwaved garbage. Taken as a prequel, it's admirable to see how the filmmakers reverse-engineered the Norwegian outpost seen in the 1982 remake, showing the origin of every little detail seen in the Carpenter version. Remember that axe on the wall in the 1982 film? Well, you get to see how it got there in this movie. But as a prequel, that's pretty much the only kind of question it can answer that the Carpenter film never did. What happened at the Norwegian outpost is pretty cut and dry just from watching the 1982 thing. A prequel was not necessary, especially when Americans are shoehorned in.
You got anything better than this cough syrup?
On top of this, the prequel feels like a retread of the Carpenter film, but with much more of a cliche slasher vibe, where it's about a monster wiping guys out. The new film takes place over a few days, so there's not as much of a sense of paranoia and isolation beyond being stuck with a bunch of Norwegians. The main character this time around is Kate, a young woman who becomes the de facto leader of the outpost for some reason, occupying an Ellen Ripley badass heroine archetype that doesn't feel earned. Mary Elizabeth Winstead had a similar badass heroine role in another sci-fi film, but her character had an arc that earned that badassdom. Where the Carpenter film felt like an ensemble where everyone had a moment to shine, it feels like the cast of the 2011 film are expendable accessories revolving around Kate. It's also just really hard to feel for any of these characters when you know they're going to, spoilers, fail and die. I think no scene better exemplifies how much this film is just a rehash than when Kate redoes Carpenter's blood test scene, but this time checking if characters have metal fillings in their teeth.
No, Lars has fillings. So he's human. It can't imitate inorganic material.
Fillings? Seriously? This is so incredibly lame.
Just go stand over there.
The only interesting plot point I recall is Uncle Owen and Derek returning mostly unscathed from the crashed helicopter suspiciously, and later attacking the crew. Nothing like a Vietnamese standoff.
I said calm down! Where the fuck is Lars?
Okay, I'm gonna be spoiling the end of the 2011 thing. Though, if you saw the Carpenter film, it's already spoiled. Still, skip to this time code, I guess. An infected Dr. Halverson flees the outpost with Kate and Uncle Owen in pursuit. The alien retreats into the spacecraft and prepares to take off in it. I don't really know why it didn't go there earlier when there wasn't all that suspicion, but whatever. Ripley, Kate, enters the ship with an engine that's apparently powered by an NES and confronts Halverson's thing that looks like it was ripped straight out of Resident Evil. Why does it still have the human face? The jig is up. Well, Kate just throws a grenade into the enemy's weak point and it blows up, unlocking a new achievement. Kate and Uncle Owen are about to leave the joint, but Kate notices something is off with the guy's earring placement beyond the fact that he's wearing jewelry to begin with.
Your earring. It was your other ear.
You know, she could have done that before he got into her only means of escape. Fucking idiot. They say to this day, Mary Elizabeth Winstead is still in Antarctica. Well, at least the closing credits lead into a much better film.
Follow me, movie.
The 2011 thing isn't really that bad. Fans of the Carpenter film might get a kick out of seeing how the two connect, but it's not a necessary story that needed to be told. It's not like it's telling a backstory for characters we know and love. These were just nameless Norwegians for all intents and purposes. Still, if you came out of the Carpenter film and wished you saw more Norwegians die, well then this film is for you. I give The Thing CGI replacement out of practical effects. So that was the entire Thing film series. It was fun to see how the original and the prequel stacked up to the Carpenter film, and I came out of this with a greater appreciation of the 1982 film. Maybe you did too. I have just one thing left to say. Where were you, childs? I would like to thank the following folks for donating to my Patreon. The channel would be nowhere without loyal viewers like you, and your continued support is greatly appreciated. If any of you would also like to donate to the channel, follow the link to my Patreon at the end of the vid, or the description. Thanks again from your old pal, Dr. Wolfula.
What's the matter? Are you okay?
I'm fine.
You sure?
Yeah, I'm okay.
You need something?
No, I'm okay.